Hey everyone, this is Andy, Director of Education at Jazz St. Louis, and I'm here to bring you our second in our series of videos called A Listener's Guide to Jazz. Today we're going to focus on the difference between melody and accompaniment. Sometimes in jazz it can be difficult to make sense of what you're hearing, and due to the improvisatory nature of the music, no two performances are ever the same. In fact, oftentimes the musicians themselves don't know entirely what is going to happen before they start playing. To make sense of this improvised music, jazz musicians organize their performances in different ways. We talked about one of these ways in our last video on form. Another way the musicians organize their performances is through the distinct roles they are playing at any given time, chiefly whether they are acting as a melodic or lead voice or in an accompanying role, be it rhythmic, harmonic, or both. The melodic voice is very important and provides the focus and direction to the entire band of improvising musicians, helping them keep the music from unraveling into chaos. This lead voice can be handed off like a baton throughout a performance, shifting the focus of musicians and the listener. Let's quickly look at the difference between melody and accompaniment. Melody can be defined as a sweet or agreeable succession or arrangement of sounds, or a rhythmic succession of single tones organized as an aesthetic whole. I like to think of melody as a part of the song you would generally be singing or humming to yourself after you heard it. It is generally what a singer would sing, if there is one present, and melody is almost always at the forefront of the music. We talked about a few melodies in our last video on form, like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Now's the Time, and Afternoon in Paris. In instrumental jazz, a horn player usually plays the melody, much like Charlie Parker did on Now's the Time from our last video. There are plenty of examples of other instruments playing the melody of a song though, like Oscar Peterson with his trio on Moten Swing. Bassist Paul Chambers plays the melody on the classic Miles Davis composition, So What? You can even hear a non-pitched drum melody by Max Roach on his solo recording, The Drum Also Waltzes. Now let's look at accompaniment. Accompaniment can be defined as an instrument or vocal part designed to support or complement the melody. This is a very succinct definition and applies perfectly to jazz, as the musicians not playing the melody are there to support the melody or lead voice at all times. In jazz, we usually think of the rhythm section, typically made up of piano, bass, and drums, as providing the accompaniment to a horn player or singer, though this can always shift. This is even more complicated in jazz because there is so much improvisation and spontaneity going on. We will talk in depth about improvisation in a future video, but in jazz, the melodic voice and accompanying voices are often improvising both of their roles at the same time. I say melodic voice because jazz usually features extended improvised sections where the lead voice is playing a solo, improvising a new melody over the form of the song on the spot. The accompanying instruments are listening to, responding to, and generally having an improvised conversation with the lead voice and each other. If we listen again to the example of Charlie Parker's Now's the Time, you will hear this shifting of the melodic voice as it takes place. The group is a very typical jazz quartet with a saxophone, piano, bass, and drums. The lead voice starts in the piano with the bass and drums accompanying before Parker comes in with the melody on saxophone. He then plays an improvised solo before passing the baton to the piano for a solo. Then the bass takes over and even the drummer gets a turn in the lead voice before Parker returns with the melody. Take a listen to Now's the Time, available on the Spotify playlist linked to the description of this video, and follow along with the listening guide to help you identify who the lead voice is. Now, in that recording, the lead voice is pretty clear, even though it shifts several times. In some early forms of jazz, especially Dixieland or traditional jazz, things are not always as easy to discern. There are often several melodic sounding voices playing all at the same time. You often have the trumpet or cornet playing the actual melody or variations on the melody, the clarinet providing sweeping counter melodies, and the trombone playing short, accented accompanying figures in the low register. All of this would be happening over the rhythm section. All this worked because even with many distinct voices playing at the same time, everyone had a defined role. You can hear an example of this in Potato Head Blues by Louis Armstrong and his Hot 7, also available in the accompanying Spotify list. Take a minute to listen and hear what this sounds like. Finally, in larger ensembles in jazz, generally referred to as big bands, this melodic or lead voice role can look a little different. In these ensembles, like the great big bands led by Duke Ellington and Count Basie, larger sections of trumpets, trombones, and woodwinds could provide unified voices, either in their specific sections or as an entire horn section. They could also provide both melodic and accompanying roles. Take the Count Basie Orchestra's great song Whirlybird, and you will hear all kinds of combinations. Basie himself starts out in the lead role on piano, with the rest of the rhythm section and even the saxophones providing an accompaniment. The saxophones then play the actual melody of the tune with the brass joining them every other phrase. You can then hear the band become a quintet for the tenor saxophone solo. The whole horn section takes over again, and even the drums get a chance to be the lead voice. Take a listen to Whirlybird and see if you can follow where the lead voice goes. I hope this has further helped you to better understand how jazz musicians organize their performances. As always, please leave any questions you may have in the comments section, and make sure to check back with Jazz St. Louis for more great content.